Well now, I wasn't expecting guests this late, so this is quite a surprise that you've turned up in this place. Nevertheless, I'm not really one to turn away strangers, so welcome. You found yourselves at a library. Feel free to make yourself comfortable at the chairs there. As for hospitality and entertainment, I couldn't really provide anything but the comfort of books, or if you'd like, I could even tell you a story. You'd be down for that? Well, this is the first time in a long time that I've heard someone would like to listen into what I have to tell. Well, since you've already agreed, I will not turn down that enthusiasm, so take a seat, and I'll pick a book for tonight that we could read together. Or rather, you could just listen along, so yeah, make yourself comfortable. Give me around 10-15 seconds while I look for a book. Okay, great. Be right back. Okay, here it is. I found this book and I have a feeling that you'll probably like this if you're into fantasy or action. So this one is called The Four Sigils, Work Records of an Arcostan Fixer. It's a story by a man named Fontaine Argalian, and I believe that this is part of a bigger story, but this one is told in the perspective of a different protagonist from the main one. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so... Oh, this one has images. It has the photo of the protagonist, and it seems that we have a female lead for this story. Her name is only stated as Lucille, and her description says, "A lone fixer, working to make the ends meet. As long as the price is right, her wand, body, and mind are at your disposal." What an interesting fellow this Lucille is. Okay then, let's get into the meat and see what Lucille has to tell for herself. Let me just scroll through the pages. We have 3 chapters listed here, but I believe we only have time for one, so let's get into the first chapter. Oh, what's this? The Four Sigils, Work Records of an Arcostan Fixer, Volume 1. Content warning. These everyday work records contain scenes of graphic violence and disturbing elements of a somewhat intense degree. Reader discretion is strongly advised, says Lucille, Fixer for Hire. Okay, so if this isn't the type of book that you'd like to hear or listen, you're free to tell me, or just shy away, but if you're willing, just let me know. You have at least 5 seconds to decide. Well, looks like you want to continue. Okay then, let's dive into the story of Lucille the Fixer. Chapter 1, or rather, Case 1, titled The Orphanage. This day just started out beautifully. If you can't read my sarcasm, that means I just wrecked my work desk, put today's paperwork on the back burner, and now I'm in the infirmary and picking out splinters sticking out from my right hand. "Ow, ow, ow," I exclaimed as I pulled a sliver of wood that got an inch deep in my flesh. On cue, blood gushed out in drops of the holes left behind, leaving my right hand numb. Being a southpaw has its small blessings, I guess. Thank the goddess for that. "Cure," I begrudgingly whispered, as a green light began to glow from my left hand. The rejuvenative spell closing my wounds. They were starting to mend, but the pain would linger for an hour or so afterward. How did it come to this? Oh, right. An infuriating report just came in from Fontaine Ethan Argelian, my contact from the Grand Arcostan Archives. It says that the Arcostan Research Commission rendered my findings for the recent commission they posted about an anomaly in the Sierra Madriga Mountains as invalid. Someone must have beat me to it. There's been a huge number of mercenary groups and individuals chasing leads about strange sightings due to the winter season getting quite bizarre. As for the source of the seasonal unrest, there are far too many conspiracies to follow that I can't even choose what to believe in. Not that it matters though. I'm more concerned about how my efforts to risk my life for a great lead turned up for nothing. All that effort to travel inside a cramped cargo wagon, my ass squeezed between crates, going to nothing. I wasn't finished reading the report when I took out my frustrations on the table with my right hand, and here we are. Wrecking a table that I can't afford to replace. Add to that my rent being due in a couple of days, and leaving that debt standing would mean fending off the homeless in Elevation 0. Don't get me wrong, it's not because I can't take them in a fight, but because I don't feel like stepping on the downtrodden. These folks are already suffering enough, and if I get added to the mix and asked to fight for what little scraps are there? Ah, boy. What the hell do I do now? I asked myself, letting out a loud sigh before I began to flip through my notebook, blowing off the wood chips wedged between the pages, and read through the newspaper clippings I pasted under my other job leads. Mercenaries needed for a week-long excursion? No. Lost cats run amok? No way. Star in a nightclub? The hell do I even have this with me? Pays good though. Meh, I'll save that for when I'm really desperate. As if I'm not already desperate enough right now. I turned to the next page, to the last piece of paper left, neatly folded in half. Hey, I remember this. I thought aloud as I unfolded the note. This was a letter Fontaine sent me a few weeks ago. It read, "Lucille, if you can spare the time, would you be so kind as to investigate this location for me? Rumor has it that there are activities occurring that would make Elevation 0 look legitimate in comparison. Heard it through the grapevine thanks to some nights visiting the archives, but I'm still curious. I'll pay for this commission personally, so long as you provide me a compelling story." The description of the place and the story behind the rumors were written in odd details reconstructed from what Fontaine heard from the Knights. Despite the convoluted information, I had a feeling about the place he referenced. Half an hour of prep work has passed and I left my rundown office. I found myself in the slums of Elevation 0. No matter what season it was, the place was never a pretty sight. I could say winter and summer were the worst seasons to be here, as there is little protection from the heat and cold. Lucky are the folks who manage to find or seize land and housing for themselves, while the majority of the Arcostans and foreigners fight tooth and nail to stay alive every day down here. The snow today was thick, around 3 to 4 inches deep. I never had many issues with the cold, but the moist seeping through my leggings made me squeamish. Ignoring my discomfort, I made my way towards the train platform and took a train heading towards the northeast gate of Elevation 0. "Excuse me," I asked the clerk. "Is there space in the cargo cars to squeeze into?" The clerk gave me a weird look.
You sure?
I gave a solemn nod and he shrugged.
Fine. Just don't complain once you're on board.
He stepped out of the booth and ushered me to where the cargo cars docked into the platform. Not long after, the train finally arrived. The usher slid the car door open, and I thanked the goddess I hadn't eaten heavy as a horribly putrid stench wafted out. "What in the world is in there?" I asked, retching.
Animals. Both dead and alive. So, are you hopping in or not?
"I'd like to buy a ticket, please."
That'll be 4 piras.
I forked over the money in exchange for a ticket. My wallet may be lighter, but I think this is one of the moments where I think I deserve to splurge on the luxury of comfort. That is, if your standard of comfort is creaky, rusted seats and shattered glass panes for windows. The trains running on Elevation 0 are in serious disrepair, but I guess it can't be helped. From what I know, they're all being personally maintained by an old machinist named Luca Dietrich out of his own pocket, without assistance from the government. Given those circumstances, even someone like me couldn't be a choosy beggar. After some time, I finally hopped off the train and walked a few more blocks before finally getting to where I needed to be, just a few minutes away from the northeast gate where the annual Arcostan Selection Tournament, also known as the method of how the higher elevations cull the population, was being held. I think it just ended a few days ago with only a handful of survivors escaping. Yep, this is the one. I found myself in front of the location of interest, an orphanage. Despite the harsh living conditions in Arcostas, there are still some kind folks that try to do good by their fellows in their everyday struggle for survival. You'll have an easier time finding diamonds in a coal mine than finding these salt-of-the-earth types here. Pulling out and re-examining Fontaine's letter, I read his details. Some knights who were stationed to conduct the tournament were entranced by the wonderful scent of food from the orphanage. Thinking it was strange for such a run-down place to have such good food, the knights paid the place a visit and were greeted by a kind, middle-aged man who oversaw the welfare of the children. They were quite a handful of little ones alongside a few workers. They all looked healthy and cheerful, stoked at the sight of knights from higher elevations to come and visit them. The knights asked if they could have a meal after inquiring about the scent, promising to be compensated for their sudden intrusion, and the orphanage owner obliged. They ate heartily and even asked for seconds, to which the owner happily obliged. After having their meal, they left and immediately noted that something wasn't right about the orphanage. The letter closed with,
"How could that place have so much food? Please find out. I'm curious to know, and so are the other knights. We don't want to seize their operations personally. Good luck." Signed, Fontaine Ethan Argalian, Record Keeper, Arcostas Grand Archives.
Sly dogs, hiring someone else to do their dirty work. As dumb as his reason sounded, he did promise compensation that would be more than enough to get by for a month. Walking up to the front door, I knocked. Sure enough, a kind, middle-aged man answered the door and greeted me with a smile.
"Hello there, young lady. How may I help you?"
I stammered. Crap. I don't know how to explain my presence here. I was hoping maybe you would have an open position for a helper or an assistant. I know I'm going out on a whim here, but I took my chances to see if there's a job available at the orphanage.
"A job for you? Well, certainly. We could always use some extra hands to help out, but I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to offer a satisfactory rate for someone looking quite accomplished such as yourself."
Me? Accomplished? Wow, what a compliment. No worries about the pay. I'd think of it as merely a bonus for rendering my service to children in need.
"That's great. When and for how long would you like to work?"
Would starting for a week's time be alright? It'd give you a nice window to assess my services without having to worry about paying me as much.
Perfect. Thanks for your suggestion.
Well, that turned out easier than I thought. Within the next hour, I was given an introduction to the children and to the other staff members, which consisted of only 2 people, twins that grew up in the orphanage named Harumi and Miharu. Everyone seemed to receive me very well, that it was almost uncanny to see people this blissful on elevation 0. Not only that, but all of the children are unlike any of the ones you see outside. They all look so cheerful and always so full of energy. Pushing my thoughts aside, my job for the week was to teach the children in batches and keep an eye out for them when they go play in the courtyard. I was designated to teach 2 classes, an hour each twice in the morning. Then lunch period and nap time takes place. Afterwards, the children are free to play in the courtyard until nightfall, where they are all instructed to go inside for dinner and get ready for bed. They offered me lodging for the week, and I obliged despite not having any luggage with me at that moment. It didn't matter since I was used to sleeping with the same clothes every other day. With that, I began my first class with the first batch of children. There were about 40 orphans present, so I gathered them, the first 20 orphans, into a classroom that had seen better days. Nevertheless, I was able to teach them some elementary level language and math. An hour later, the first batch cleared out for the next batch of kids to come in and sit down for my lessons. All of them were eager to participate, and I admit their energy was infectious. Teaching them gave me a good feeling that I'm able to help out, even a little, despite my reason why I'm actually here. Just as I was wrapping up class for the second batch of orphans, a wonderful smell filled the halls. The children's faces lit up and they cheered in unison. "Lunchtime! Finally!" They all scrambled to the door, pushing and shoving around in their haste to leave the classroom. I tried to restore order, but they were too excited that their clamor drowned out my voice. I let it slide. I'm not going to stress myself with the added burden of disciplining children. I reached the dining room, the enticing smell of food wafting into my nostrils. Harumi and Miharu were already serving portions of food to the children, while I excitedly thought of the day's menu. However, when I walked towards a vacant spot on the table, I stopped short, realizing I made a rookie mistake. I forgot to bring my wand with me. I made a quick dash back to the classroom to look for it, not willing to risk anyone here to pick it up and start slinging spells willy-nilly, especially the children here. "Not here," I whispered to myself as I retraced my steps. Did I leave it somewhere else? I hastily went over where I had been, made it to the room assigned to me, and found it where I stored it. Kicking myself for carelessness, I returned to the dining hall. Huh? My eyebrows rose as I saw no more food was left. "Oh, teacher." Miharu spotted me and bowed just as I was about to metaphorically kick myself for the second time. "I'm so sorry. The kids ate up all the food. I don't think we'll be able to prepare a new set of meals until dinner." "Is that so?" I asked, pasting a forced smile on my face. "No worries, the children should have more to eat so they can grow. I'll take care of my own food." After one last bow, Miharu returned to her duties. Of course, I'd be dismayed about being unable to have a hot meal today, but these things happen. Thankfully, I had some bread I brought along for emergencies like this. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The afternoon went by quickly as I watched the kids tire themselves out playing in the courtyard. I could feel the telltale signs of motion sickness come over me as I observed them play tag and other games that involved running, pushing, and tackling. They were all fast kids, and that's not because I talk like an old geezer. As I said before, these kids were unlike the average child you would see strewn all over the streets of the dismal Elevation 0. I pulled out my notebook and pen to write down my observations. As I was about to wrap up one page, two things happened in quick succession. I saw a ball passing by my feet, and in the next moment, half my face was in the snow. Hup! Oops, the child said, picking himself up. Sorry, Teacher Lucille. Ugh. I grunted. That tackle was disorienting. I underestimated the kind of momentum a small child could generate, and this one was one of the smaller ones. Teacher? Oh no! The child exclaimed as he began to panic, shaking my arm and even getting drool all over my clothing. I think I killed the teacher. No, I replied, hauling myself up and brushing off the cold snow off my skirt. I'm fine, little fella. No need to worry. Phew. I'm sorry, Teacher Lucille. I didn't mean to. It's okay. I know it was an accident. Go on, back to your game. I kicked the ball to the snowy courtyard with the kid following suit as the children resumed their game. I looked at the sleeves of my robe and winced. It was drenched with saliva. Just lovely. I couldn't wash it off as I don't want my robe soaked with freezing water, so I left it as is and tried not to mind it, waiting for the time to pass until I was called to help out to prepare for dinner time. The other twin, Harumi, was there wheeling in the various pots that contained tonight's dinner. She looked clammy and tired. I couldn't blame her. Cooking every day for more than 40 people was a daunting task. I couldn't even be bothered to cook for myself. Seeing the sorry state she was in, I decided to offer assistance, to which she happily obliged. Thank you, teacher. She heaved a tired breath. These past few days have been tough. You speak as if you have something daunting in your mind. May I ask why? It's just, the suppliers arrived late around midnight and now they're looking to make a profit out of us. Suppliers? I raised a brow, curious at her implications. She twiddled her fingers, looked around her surroundings, then came up close to me and whispered. Suppliers for cheap ingredients that we use to feed the children. I see. I don't understand why Harumi had to whisper that detail, but before I could even process the thought, she immediately followed up. Teacher, if you don't mind, will you please accompany my sister and I when the suppliers arrived? I know it's out of your way and you must be tired from watching over the children the whole day, but please, we'd feel safer if you were there. Me? I'm not exactly a fighter myself. I lied as naturally as I breathed. There won't be any fights, I promise. Harumi insisted, but I could see the fear clear on her face. I hope, at least. A hole opened up in my stomach, a pit filled with curiosity that might be the death of me. Okay, I'll do it, I replied. Really? Oh, thank you. She gave me a light hug before awkwardly pulling away. Anyway, we must begin setting the table. Dinner tonight. What's wrong with our food tonight? It's vegetable soup. The kids wouldn't like it. I let out a chuckle. Well, of course. Kids do hate their veggies. Yeah, you could say that. Harumi proceeded to scoop spoonfuls of soup into the bowls I laid out on the table. The smell was really nice. I couldn't imagine the children hating on something this tantalizing. And yet, when it was dinner time... Blah! Veggies! Big sis, don't we have no meat tonight? No meat? Boo! The kids rioted and threw a tantrum at us, complaining at how they wanted meat for dinner. The poor twins were overwhelmed at trying to calm the children down, so I had to step up and help maintain order. Hey now, I barked with a commanding tone. Is that attitude proper to treat your big sisters that always take care of you? But teacher... No buts. You've all been very rude tonight. They made this with love and care for all of you, and you're all acting horribly to them. Is that how you should act to these big sisters that love you? They all shut up, but instead of remorse, their faces were traced with scowls. I could feel a crackle in the air, and it dispersed as the doors of the dining hall swung wide open. Now, the owner walked in carrying a huge box. Harumi, Miharu, Teacher Lucille, please leave the children to my care. He walked to the middle and plopped the box down. In it were packed meals. Meat! Finally! We love you, Uncle! Yay! Hooray, Uncle! The children cheered as they grabbed the packed meals for themselves and ate hastily. My eyes were either playing tricks on me, or did they just finish the entire meal between 2 to 3 minutes? Ha! Children and their metabolisms. The owner chuckled and they turned towards us. I'm sorry, I could only afford for the children. We'll have to settle for the vegetable soup. There were no complaints from the three of us. How could I? The soup was fantastic. I admit I may have pigged out a little bit, but I guess it made the twins happy that I enjoyed their cooking. With bellies filled, all the children went to their quarters to settle for the night. On the other hand, the twins and I awaited the suppliers that were to arrive at the orphanage. It was around 10:30 in the night when a carriage pulled up in front of the orphanage. There were 3 men with faces covered in bandanas present for the exchange. They hopped off their carriage and hauled sacks into the orphanage with Miharu's guidance to where to bring them. So, this is where they get their meat, huh? I'd call it unsanitary, but this was yet another reminder of where we were. Elevation 0. All of us stepped inside the pantry, the putrid smell of the raw meat in the sacks stirring something in my stomach. Now, about our payment, one of the masked men began, turning to Harumi. But didn't the owner negotiate about... I don't care what that old geezer said. You don't know what we went through to get the stuff you need. You're not the one risking your lives and going through the mud. Start paying up, or things will get ugly. One of the men grabbed Harumi by the wrist. I instinctively reached for my wand, but she put up a good fight and even came out on top of their struggle. Let go of me! Harumi yelped, breaking free from the man's grip, sending him tumbling over the sacks of meat they carried. He tripped over and the sacks spilled their contents. No, our food! Miharu cried. I too felt like crying. Because what the hell was I looking at? I retched as the vegetable soup I had earlier was threatening to come back as I saw what their ingredients were. Out of the sacks tumbled a dismembered head, followed by multiple body parts, all crudely cut up. The horrid stench of rotting corpses filled the small pantry, and my stomach made good on its promise as the soup I had for dinner forcefully came back up. Teacher Lucille! Harumi came to my side and pulled me away. You must leave, now! But Miharu! Before I could protest, I could hear the thundering footsteps echoing from the halls as a handful of orphans barged into the pantry. Hey, it's meat! My eyes went wide. Did one of them cheer? Finally, we have meat again! Hooray! I love meat! The children greedily snatched up the body parts and quickly disappeared into the dark maze of the hallways. Teacher Lucille, please chase after them, Harumi pleaded. They aren't allowed to eat it raw. I was filled with dread. I've seen a lot of things, but this was a whole new level of screwed up. Even in my nauseous state, I followed Harumi's request and chased after the kids. They were easy to track as they left behind a faint smell of blood. A haunting question crossed my mind as I ran. What did she mean by not allowed to eat it raw? I deduced something disturbing. This wasn't the first time these children were fed remains. I drew my wand at the ready should I need to defend myself. At last, I reached the hallway. There was a door, slightly ajar. I gently opened the door. In unison, all the children's heads turned. Their smiles were wide, mouths filled with torn chunks of human flesh and sinew. These weren't the cute and adorable children I once knew a few hours ago. All their facial features were slightly disfigured and horrifying as they ate. Teacher! They all cried a joyful tune. Do you want some too? I took a step back. Words stuck onto my throat as I felt another wave of nausea hit me hard. I slammed the door shut, turned around and yelped as I came face to face with the orphanage owner.
Please let them feast, the owner said solemnly. I'm desperate to keep them fed. I couldn't possibly let them wither and die in the cold. You wouldn't either, would you?
I still couldn't reply. Fear, disgust, and insanity gripped me like a noose on my neck.
Please leave while you can. Take the twins with you. It's only evident that they're getting harder to control. And I'm afraid that devour Harumi and Miharu as well, should an unfortunate time comes.
The owner slid past me and had his hand on the doorknob of the room filled with cannibal children. I dared not figure out what he had in mind to do, and so I ran to my room, retrieved all my necessities, and went to find the twins in the kitchen. "Harumi! Miharu!" I called out. "We have to leave now!" As I stumbled into the pantry in a panic, a gruesome sight awaited me. 3 pairs of clouded, lifeless eyes were staring at nothing as I saw the men sent to collect from the orphanage hung over the pantry, freshly deceased. One of them had their neck hanging the wrong way, another pointed at the ceiling, and the third one was slung over a chair, a cleaver still embedded in his head. 2 shapes were hunched over the remains of one of them, the sounds of crunching, chewing, and giggling echoing in the small room. "It's been so long since I've tasted meat this good again. Don't I know it, the sweet sustenance?" 2 heads turned towards me and asked the question as one. "Would you like to know, Teacher Lucille?" They smiled at me, and even in the dim light of the pantry, I could still see in sharp detail the bits of human entrails between their teeth. They giggled again, and I broke. The only thing I knew was that I could barely see where I was going through the tears in my eyes, but I managed to run to the entrance and out the orphanage, not even bothering to look behind me, at least until I could see the dim lights of Elevation Zero's streets. Once I saw the street lights, I fell onto the snow and lost what was left of the dinner I had that night. I felt horribly faint, but I willed myself to haul myself up from the cold snow and towards the train station, desperately willing the engine to go faster because I wanted to get home. Well, this story got quite heavy now, didn't it? I didn't expect it for that route to go to. It was quite gruesome, but you enjoyed it. Well, I'm glad that you did. It seems like this story is still a work in progress, so if you'd like, and whenever there's a new chapter available, I could just ring you up and let you know if you'd like to listen again. You would? Well, that's great. Although it is getting quite late in the night, so perhaps this is a good time to take a rest for now. You think you couldn't possibly sleep with that kind of story in mind? Well, if it helps, then would you like to sleep together here in the library? I could just lay out some duvet, some covers, and we could have some kind of sleepover. And again, I guess technically this is a sleepover, considering that you have to stay here for the night to avoid the rain outside. Yeah, that would sound lovely, wouldn't it? Give me a minute. I'm gonna go get some duvets, some covers, and some extra pillows, and we can just sleep here until dawn. So yeah, thank you for hearing my story, and maybe we could do this some other time again? Great, I really like that. Okay, hang tight, I'll be back.